there, Merry Christmas or Happy New Year depending on when I finish this video. Instead of a regular Christmas special this time, I felt that at the end of the year I could do a roundup of all the games I've played and beaten this year, since that's what I've mostly been doing outside of trying to work on videos and development heck, oops. And I don't just mean releases from 2022 either. I occasionally replay old favorites or just decide to check out classics that I've missed out on. So today we're doing quick fire reviews of a grab bag of 41 games I've beaten this year, and you might see a few surprise picks here and there. Now, since I arbitrarily limited my list to games that I've quote-unquote beaten, a bunch of games are being omitted from here, mostly multiplayer-centric games without definitive endings, or stuff I've only taken a passing glance at. So for some honorable mentions in these categories, Fall Guys on Switch is pretty nice, the GTA trilogy on Switch is still at least better than the cloud port, Kirby's Dream Buffet is cute but cruel, and Nintendo Switch Sports is fine. Also, I'll not be talking about any spoilers for the upcoming games, so no need to worry about those. With that said, we have a lot to go through, so here's every game I've beaten in 2022. I started things off with a replay of the original Paper Mario as it arrived on Nintendo Switch Online last December. I actually haven't done a complete playthrough of this game since I first played it on an emulator more than nearly 15 years ago. And I don't know what else to say, this game definitely still holds up today and is an absolute gem. I kinda remember on my first emulator playthrough I basically cheated by giving myself infinite FP and just using Bombette My Beloved to blow everything up. So I guess it's nice to finally play this as intended, strategy and all. I even pulled off some insane luck on occasion. In terms of presentation, this game has aged gracefully for the N64. It's a perfect example of how to have great exploration and world building in a Mario game while still keeping a basic save the princess story. The interconnected nature of the Mushroom Kingdom is something I'm also glad Origami King brought back. Either way, if you've never played a Mario RPG before, this is a fantastic starting point. Banjo-Kazooie is one of those games I've heard a lot of from YouTubers over the years but never actually played for myself. Come to think of it, a lot of Rare's Golden Age games fit that criteria for me, the only exception basically being DKC1. But yes, I finally resolved to try out one of the most acclaimed 3D platformers after actually finding a physical copy and also having it drop on NSO, and yeah, it totally deserves the praise. I'm pretty sure the only other 3D platformers I've fully played up to this point are all the Mario ones plus A Hat in Time, so it's very neat to finally experience that intermediate stage between Mario 64's foundation and the open sandbox design I'd eventually enjoy in Mario Odyssey. Banjo is definitely the pioneer of open worldish platformer design in retrospect, and is still worth checking out today if you haven't. Just keep some save states on hand if you're playing the original N64 version. Oh no! I haven't actually played the sequel Banjo-Tooie yet as of this video. I've heard it's sort of a 50-50 split on whether people think it's better or worse than the original, so that definitely piques my interest. So yeah, go put it on NSO sometime, Nintendo. Thanks. For some reason, I keep playing Pokémon spin-offs rather than the mainline games. Not saying this is better than the mainline games though. Pokémon Channel is tough to describe as a game concept. If you know anything about this game, it's probably that you just watch TV channels with Pikachu. And yes, that is a big part of the game. The Pichu Brother short is actually pretty cute when you're not forced to watch it like 3 times from beginning to end throughout the course of the game. But aside from this half pet sim part of the game, you can also take Pikachu to various places and talk to Pokemon, collect Pokemon cards, and complete quests across several real-time days to actually quote-unquote beat the game. I guess it is worth trying just for the bizarre concept alone. I picked up the Japanese version just because it came in complete packaging along with a bonus disc and e-reader cards, which are certainly a neat novelty. But it might get a little boring if you're not a Pokemon fan or don't play with a bunch of friends in a Discord chat like I did. When I first saw A Short Hike in action, it immediately stood out with its art style. I mean, plenty of indie games nowadays adopt retro 3D art styles, but this game does deliberately attempt to invoke feelings of the DS era specifically with its low resolution, which I've never really seen done in an indie game up to now. You play as a penguin named Claire and are given free reign to explore Hog Peak Provincial Park, where you can explore, complete small quests, and find collectibles to upgrade your abilities, and ultimately attempt to scale the mountain once you think you're ready. It's a short game, it's literally in the title, but for the time you spend around this miniature open world, there is plenty to see and do, and coupled with a relaxing soundtrack, it just oozes warm and cozy feelings. I highly recommend this one if you're looking for a short but sweet experience, and there's also plenty of those coming up on the list. In Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, Turnip Boy commits tax evasion. And with that, you have a pretty good idea what the tone and writing of this game's gonna be. And it's not bad at all, just a whole lot of vegetables basking in contemporary references. Though it might not be everyone's cup of tea. You're probably wondering what type of game this is, and it's a Zelda-like top-down adventure. The gameplay itself isn't too much to write home about. There's no special gimmick or anything. You hit things with swords, solve overall puzzles, and do quests, occasionally finding cool costumes and tools for Turnip Boy. There's a portal gun in this one. If you play this game, it's mostly going to be for the writing, and for that, it's a decent time waster without being a slog to get through. It also has weird lore and nuclear bombs, so have fun with that. That's right, I'm putting a game for the Pokémon Mini on here, that's how whack this list goes. You might not even have heard of it before, but it's basically a Dreamcast VMU style handheld except completely independent and themed to Pokemon. I might make a video on it someday, who knows. Pokémon Breeder Mini has you taking care of one of the 3 starters from Gen 3, Trico, Mudkip, and Torchic, in real-time Tamagotchi style. You can feed your Pokemon, brush it, play with it, and raise its stats by training at the park, until it's all grown up and has to leave you in a super sad sequence to be adopted by a new owner, rinse and repeat. That's it, it's a simplified Tamagotchi alternative without death or offspring, but the sprite work and animations are pretty charming for the low resolution they had to work with. And this game probably helped satiate those who wanted the Tamagotchi experience on the Pokemon Mini, but didn't own a Pocket Pikachu for some reason. Alright, I'll come clean. I call myself a Kirby fan, but frankly, there's a lot in this Puffball's game library that I've never fully played through. One of them being Kirby Squeak Squad. I do remember trying it out back in the day along with the other 2D Kirby games in the GBA DS era, but just never ended up doing a full playthrough because I was young and moved on to other things. Over the years, I've heard people say this game is one of the weakest Kirby platformers, and I don't really see it. At worst, it's your average 2D Kirby game, but it still has a few defining traits. Sure, the level design isn't super special and can be weirdly short sometimes. The plot is stupid and I love it, but other than that, I don't see anything to specifically hate this game for. And mechanics-wise, this game has some of the most unique copy abilities in the series. Practicalness may vary. Trying to find all the collectibles in the game is also pretty fun, aside from the couple of times that amounted to taking the correct level path through plain luck. It reminds me of the Great Cave Offensive at times. This is more like the Great Kirby game in Offensive. Okay, let's just move on. In a period of time where Nintendo's retro re-release strategy was kinda whack to be honest, NES Remix was one of the best uses of their old material. Turning old NES games into WarioWare-esque bite-sized challenges, while also subtly serving as both tutorials or teaching tips and tricks, is a neat idea. And let's not forget the actual remixes, which still to this day have so much more untapped potential. We are still waiting on SNES Remix, Nintendo. If they never port the series over to the Switch, now's really your chance to pick it up before the 3DS and Wii U eShops are gone. And to be honest, either version is fine. And also I put this game on the list because there is technically an ending screen showing your high scores if you unlock all the games and complete a certain amount of stages, so there you go. Oh boy, this one came out of nowhere, huh? As I said previously, I've never tried a lot of 3D platformers that don't star plumbers, and Psychonauts is one of the ones I've always heard of and occasionally wondered about. The idea of 3D platformer levels based around mental worlds sounded pretty promising. It is definitely a mid-2000s platformer that shows its age today in terms of physics and jankiness of certain mechanics. And during my playthrough, I never bothered to find every single collectible because of the tedium, but it is still a creative smorgasbord of 3D platforming with well-themed levels and funny writing, some of that 2000s edge aside. The Tim Burton-esque presentation might not be for everyone, but it's still a mind-bending great time if you don't necessarily care about hunting down every flying figment. Spoiler alert, but after playing the sequel, man, it was kinda rough adjusting back to this first one afterwards, so if you want to try the series, then definitely start with this first. I'll have plenty more thoughts about the sequel later on. Speaking of notable platformers I've barely played, the Wario Land series. The first Wario Land game on the Game Boy is the first Wario Land game I finally played from beginning to end, and it is certainly a start to the series and your run-of-the-mill Game Boy platformer. Compared to the later games in the series, it shares more gameplay similarities with the Mario Land games that came before it. So as someone who was more accustomed to Mario platformers, I didn't have trouble settling in. It probably also helped that I played a bit of Virtual Boy Wario Land as well, which plays in a similar style. Maybe I should actually finish that game next. Overall, it's basically just a Mario platformer with melee attacks and collectibles, but still manages to establish its own visual and musical identity that paved the way for the future of Wario, and its greatest achievement. Raise your hand if you remember Shift. The 3 people in the audience, I see you. Shift is a simple concept for a puzzle platformer. You have to platform your way to the goal and avoid spikes, but you can shift yourself into the ground at any point and literally turn the level layout on its head. It's a super creative use of negative space in a platformer that I've rarely seen used anywhere else, and makes for endlessly fun level designs that make you just want to keep doing one after the other. Shift started life as a series of Flash games and has seen multiple ports and reboots to many modern platforms since. This in particular being the PSP version of the first game with extra levels. It's a great way to enjoy the game and looks pretty nice on a Vita screen too. If you've never tried the series before or are hankering for some old-time Flash games, I highly recommend checking out the original series of games. The 3rd and 4th games have frickin' Metroidvania world maps. Disney's Epic Mickey is not as epic as it claims to be, but still interesting. I don't play a lot of Disney games in general, but the premise of this game being a 3D platformer featuring forgotten cartoon characters in dark twisted worlds was still pretty intriguing. And yes, this game probably served as a precursor to all of this stuff, but let's not talk about that. You play as everyone's favorite powerful rat Mickey Mouse, going around and using paint and thinner to make things appear or disappear in order to solve platforming puzzles and fight enemies. It's a run-of-the-mill 3D platformer with the occasional jank and obtuse puzzles, but I never found it to be super annoying like some people claim. Maybe it's just the part of me talking that's accustomed to the camera in Mario 64. The Lonesome Manor stretching room puzzle though, I just skipped right through that sucker. I have no idea how that works and I'm glad they gave you an alternate route. The whole dark fantasy world building littered with Disney references is the meat on the bones here, and you can tell the people who worked on this definitely had love for the source material and wanted to experiment the heck out of it, or as much as Disney would allow. Aside from that, the gameplay is pretty basic, but hey, they got Mickey's ears to look right when you turn the camera. Take that, Kingdom Hearts. Oh yeah, obligatory Oswald mention. Animal Crossing New Horizons Happy Home Paradise is an add-on to the original game in a similar vein as the Happy Home Designer spin-off for the 3DS, where you're dedicated to meticulously designing homes for villagers. And yes, there is technically an ending to this expansion, so it counts. You do really have to enjoy the customization aspects of New Horizons to get the most out of this, and in that sense it does a very good job. Say what you will about the original game, but I think you'll still agree that customization is one of the aspects that got a big boost in New Horizons, so it makes sense to expand on it even further. I'm not the greatest Animal Crossing designer, but I still had fun making cool and jokey homes. And I also appreciate how the new additions and improvements to home customization that you can unlock eventually also apply to your regular island. All in all, a cute little side game that let me squeeze more time out of New Horizons, and God knows we definitely needed more content for that game. Minit has a simple premise. You're playing a Zelda clone but only have 1 minute to do stuff before you just die. In each of those precious 60 seconds, you'll need to find a way to make progress, find checkpoints, and solve puzzles. The time limit can feel like an arbitrary restriction, but it does open the way for some interesting scenarios, and as a small indie game, it doesn't overstay its welcome and become tedious. A nice execution of a novel, quirky gameplay idea. I deliberately wrote this section to be less than a minute long, but I guess I way overshot that, wow. Oh heck yeah! Kirby gets his own mainline 3D platformer after 22 years and he definitely passes with flying colors. It may have took a while for HAL Lab to figure out, but the basic Kirby moveset does end up translating very well to the 3rd dimension. The new and revamped abilities, for how few of them there are total, are all fun to control. None of them feel like extras or too situational to use. And of course the level design is meticulous, the soundtrack is sublime, all that. Seriously, they only started making 2.5D Kirby platformers 11 years ago, and HD ones like 4 years ago. How is the set dressing and detail in these 3D worlds so amazing? Now whether or not Forgotten Land is the best Kirby game out of all of them is still up for debate. Since this is a whole new beginning for Kirby, I feel there is definitely more room to expand and improve upon the formula. For example, the ability variety and level themes. I'm really hoping this is our 3D Triple Deluxe and we'll eventually get our Planet Robobot moment for 3D Kirby. Please HAL, I know you guys can do it. SUPERHOT VR is the first major VR game I've played, and dang what a first impression. Keep in mind that before this, my last 2 VR devices are the Virtual Boy and Labo VR. The Quest 2, company controversy aside, is one heck of a step up in terms of entry-level VR tech. There's definitely better stuff out there, but as an introduction to VR gaming, it's not bad, and SUPERHOT absolutely sold me on it. Like in the original game, time moves only when you move, and you have to dispatch a large ambush of enemies with whatever tools and weapons you have at your disposal. This formula translates perfectly into VR, and going through the motions of assessing your situation while staying still, and then executing a plan while dodging bullets with your head, catching weapons flying out of enemies' hands after you shoot them, it all feels amazing. The whole time slowing down gimmick is meant to make you feel more like a John Wick type killer machine, and being in VR totally amplifies this feeling. It can get challenging, and you will die plenty of times, but finally nailing down that perfect run without dying feels awesome. I guess while we're on the subject of VR, since it's not eligible for this list, an honorable mention goes to Beat Saber for being one of the most legitimately fun rhythm games to use as a workout. It is definitely a VR killer app. And out of nowhere, a Flash game. Super Mario 63 is a fan game I've had lots of nostalgia for, and I've sung its praises once on this channel even. And I decided to do my first proper replay of it since I played it for the first time all those years ago. It's a 2D take on the Mario 64 formula where you explore worlds and find collectibles with a dash of Mario Sunshine sprinkled in. For a Flash game, it has a surprisingly deep amount of content and very fun movement. There are way more secrets scattered around compared to Mario 64, from invisible passageways to tons of secret levels, and the dialogue is early internet humor that thankfully hasn't aged badly from what I recall. And it even has a level editor, what's not to like about that? Here are some of my levels from 2011, can you tell I had too much fun with this? Either way, if you're a fan of Mario 64, this interpretation of it is absolutely worth checking out, and it still holds up incredibly well today. The 3DS's early years were filled with companies trying to recapture lightning in a bottle by putting out sequels to the most popular DS games. And while most of them never really topped their predecessors, Brain Age was definitely one of the series that got shafted the most. I mean, some of you have probably either completely forgotten or don't even know that Brain Age had a 3DS entry. Concentration training is all about training concentration. The new devilish exercises put on a new twist by having you memorize questions that have been asked several rounds ago. And it is a rack on the brain. There's a reason you're only allowed to do each of these exercises once per day. They might be a lot tougher than your average Brain Age exercise, but thankfully a lot of the classic minigames from the series also return here and are just as good as ever. There's more variety here than the Switch version. Virus Buster is back, and there's also another puzzle game based on Wario's Woods. There's plenty of content here. I played this game until I unlocked every exercise and rolled the credits, and it was definitely a fun daily diversion while it lasted. If you missed the Brain Age series and this entry flew under your radar, maybe give it a look before the 3DS eShop goes down. Chicory: A Colorful Tale is a game from the minds behind Wandersong, a 2018 release that I sang a lot of praise for when it launched. So I was definitely looking forward to what the team was cooking up next. The premise is that it's a top-down adventure game where the entire world is a literal canvas. You can draw and paint on it however you like with a magic paintbrush, and of course this mechanic plays into several puzzles throughout the game. It's a very clever concept that serves multiple gameplay functions, such as coloring in paths you've been to before, or even swimming through ink Splatoon style. Now some of you might be thinking, it's a game about drawing, I'm a terrible artist, what do I do then? But drawing experience is absolutely not a requirement for this game. In fact, it plays a lot into this game's plot and themes, which I'm sure a lot of artists or even creators in general can relate to regardless of experience. I don't want to spoil a lot of it here, but if you're hankering to experience a small, charming, and heartfelt story as a paintbrush-wielding dog in a world where everyone is named after food, do not pass this one up. Cut the Rope. Look, you know Cut the Rope. You've probably only played it on a mobile device though, unless you for some reason specifically seeked out one of the weird ports it received over the years, including the DSiWare port and this physical exclusive 3DS collection of the first 3 mobile games. That's basically all this is. It is a more accurate port of the game than the DSi version, but it feels a little weird to play Cut the Rope in a landscape orientation just so you can have a crude 3D model of Omnom on the top screen. But if you want to play no-frills vanilla Cut the Rope without all the shenanigans associated with mobile games nowadays, this is still a solid set of puzzles. This game still holds up as a paragon in mobile game design. Okay, how does one describe Bugsnax? At its core, it's a Pokémon Snap and Ape Escape inspired adventure game where you go around an island and try to catch and collect Bugsnax, creatures that are kinda bug and kinda snack. Look at the Chi Poops, look at the Queebo, look at the Selly Sticks, look at the baby cake legs. And next to these wacky creatures, we have a story where you interview the people who've come to visit the island and try to solve the mystery of the island itself and understand the deep motivations and interpersonal conflicts between these Muppet characters. These two sound like they absolutely should not mix, and yet they do. That is the magic of Bugsnax. It pulls you in with bunger and leaves you having an existential crisis wondering what the hell just happened at the end of the game. And a hankering for burgers. Kirby 64 is another game I ticked off the Kirby list this year. I've never heard a lot about the actual game itself aside from the story and characters it introduced. And funny thing, this is still the only Kirby game I've played in the Dark Matter trilogy. Maybe I should fix that. But for Kirby's first 2.5D adventure, it's completely serviceable. The ability combining system is a pretty neat addition, if only some of the collectibles that were gated behind certain abilities weren't a bit on the obtuse side to figure out. Aside from that, the level design isn't particularly a standout, though it has its occasional creative moments. I will personally put this as a solid B-tier Kirby game aside the likes of Squeak Squad, but let me know what you guys think. Portal Companion Collection is the second time I've played through the Portal series, the first time being in 2017, so yes, I was late to the cake party. Tech-wise, these ports run perfectly on the Switch, both running at 1080p 60fps with gyro support, including some content previously exclusive to older console ports. It's a perfect way to enjoy these games. As for the games themselves, it's Portal. Okay, if you, like me, still haven't bothered to play these games until recent years, these are some of the cleverest, humorous, and overall favorite non-Nintendo games I've ever played. And this is coming from someone who's traditionally not a shooter fan and has also barely touched any other Valve IP in the past. We'll go back to that in a bit. These games have been available on PC for cheap during multiple sales now, and if that hasn't convinced you to give them a shot, there's no other reason not to with the Switch ports now available. Just please give these games a try, they're called one of the best puzzle games of all time and for good reason. Side note for the section, I also played through the recently released Portal with RTX mod on PC. It's Portal with RTX. Yep. I like Splatoon. I'm not the biggest fan of it and I still suck at the multiplayer, but for what I've tried of the second game, it was still a decently fun time. Most of it was kinda spent in the single player mode though, so it's kinda funny that I somehow never got around to trying the Octo expansion until it was made available in the NSO expansion pack. Seeing most people have sung its praises as being better than a base campaign in almost every way. And I can definitely see that. There is a more mission-based structure to the campaign with a wider variety of objectives, so those who are looking for more of that Mario Galaxy-esque get-to-the-end level design might be slightly disappointed. But these stages are definitely a way more creative showcase of the different Splatoon mechanics, and despite the notorious difficulty claims, is still worth a try. So anyway, yeah, Nintendo made a great Portal game. I will not elaborate. Okay, so I've completed Sonic Mania, but is it embarrassing to admit that I've never fully played through each of the classic Sonic quadrilogy before Sonic Origins? Removing archaic live systems can help go a long way. I know, I'm not a real gamer. Jokes aside, I know there have been notorious issues surrounding the Origins compilation, and your mileage may vary on that front. But as someone who just wants a simple way to experience the whole classic Sonic saga without having to resort to emulator save states or rewinds that might feel cheap to most people just to get past some of the tougher parts, these are perfectly playable ports of the remix with most of the bells and whistles intact. These quality of life features really saved my butt in some later parts of Sonic 3. And now that I'm finally able to go through them all, I can fully see their appeal now. They're still great classic platformers, with Sonic 3 and Knuckles being quite the meaty experience for a Genesis game. You probably don't need to hear me say more about these games, I'm the one outlier here. Say No More is one of those short but bizarre and silly games. Actually, it's less of a game and more of an interactive narrative depending on how you look at it. There's almost no depth to the actual gameplay at all. It's your first day on the job and everyone around the office seems to be asking you for ridiculous favors. You don't know how to respond at first, but are soon taught the magical power of saying no, complete with your own choice of language. And that is all you do throughout the game as your rebellious nature takes you down a wacky story as you quite literally fight your way up the corporate ladder. It's a pretty automated on-rails experience, but you do at least have the choice of not saying no to certain things, though I guess to elaborate would be spoiling the story. The charm of the game is absolutely the selling point here, from the funny dialogue and acting to the low-poly PS1-ish art style. If you're just looking for something to waste an afternoon with, you wouldn't want to say no to the... I'm sorry, that's really the one ending I could come up with. I sound like a generic game reviewer right now, oh my god. Continuing my trend of only playing Pokemon spin-offs, Pokemon Snap. For an N64 game, it is relatively simple compared to its peers, where all you do is go on rails adventures taking pictures of Pokemon. It's a basic concept, but here it's done pretty well, and you can tell they tried to squeeze as much charm as possible out of those N64 graphics. Some of the puzzles you need to solve to get certain Pokemon to appear might be a little obtuse, but I had some guidance from friends who've played the game before and had a blast going through it. I liked it so much that I ended up picking up new Pokémon Snap afterwards, but as of right now I haven't finished it yet. Maybe you see it in next year's video. Ah yes, the one JRPG series that I'm surprised I could ever get into. On the surface, the Xenoblade series looks like something that would absolutely turn me off. But dang, I don't know, the combo of an active battle system and open world exploration just won me over, I guess. I don't even care about anime that much. I didn't look at too much of Xenoblade 3's marketing before release. I wasn't afraid of being spoiled by it, but I felt I'd understand the game's world and characters better as I played it naturally, and boy was it worth it. In terms of story, it's a lot more straightforward than the multiple plot threads going throughout the first two games, but it still achieves the same level of genuinely surprising you with its twists and pulling at your heartstrings at points. Gameplay-wise, you take the best bits of stuff from Xenoblade 1 and 2, trim off or improve all the bad stuff from 2, add in mechas, don't lie, these guys are basically mechas, and what you get is a system that I'd say is on par if not better than Xenoblade 1. In the previous two games, there was always a mechanic or two that I never fully bothered learning or understanding due to its complexity or obscurity, and that never really happened here. And just like when I played the definitive edition of Xenoblade 1, I was more than happy to sidetrack myself for as long as I wanted doing every single side quest I came across, which probably speaks to how engaging I found this game. All in all, this game was a fantastic summer time waster. Monolith Soft keeps outdoing themselves, and I can't wait for the expansion story. The Looker is very obviously a parody of The Witness, but it's about connecting lines. I've never actually played The Witness, but hey, this game was free. Actually, that's it. It's free. Go try it out yourself. It's best experienced completely blind and I don't want to spoil it. After finishing Psychonauts and upgrading to a PC, I obviously wanted to take a look at the sequel. But in between those games was a VR spin-off, so here it is. As a VR game, it's honestly a little bit lacking. It has the trappings of an early VR game, so all you do is use a regular controller and look around to interact with things. And that's how you move around and solve environmental puzzles. It's pretty cool to see the psi powers through the perspective of VR, especially grabbing stuff with telekinesis and throwing them around or bringing them in front of you to examine carefully. But it's nothing to write home about gameplay-wise as a VR game. Though as something for hardcore fans that serves as a stopgap and plot filler between two mainline games 16 years apart, it's decent. SPOOKWARE is WarioWare with skeletons. At least it's a great horror-themed PC adaptation of the formula, coupled with some fun overall exploration and story. I like the idea of each set of microgames utilizing different types of controls, like going from using two buttons to point and clicking with the mouse, to exclusively using the arrow keys. It doesn't do everything perfectly, some of the games can be obtuse or super strict given the time limit, and what's currently the latest part of the game has a gauntlet right at the end that's a giant spike in difficulty, but I still enjoy my time enough to look forward to the remaining episodic parts and see what shenanigans these three Skelebros are up to next. Psychonauts 2 is definitely up there with Forgotten Land as the most favorite 3D platformer I've checked out this year. While Forgotten Land is more of a brand new concept for the Kirby series, Psychonauts 2 basically improves on everything about the first game gameplay-wise, makes both movement and combat super fun, dials the presentation up to 11, dear lord the animation in this game is phenomenal, and overall makes a collectathon that just oozes with creativity and personality. I know this is the one go-to example everyone brings up, but Psyking Sensorium is chef's kiss. The quality of life improvements are so good that I ended up 100% completing the game, in a series where the major collectibles are floating PNG outlines that are infamous for being terrible to spot at times. And it also makes it super hard trying to readjust to the first game, but trust me, the first one is still worth a play. This was just a joy to play through from beginning to end, and I really hope there's more stories to be told with this world and cast in the future. I am surprised no one has come up with PowerWash Simulator until recently. There is no fail state, there is no time limit, you just get thrown into various places and slow but steadily power wash dirt away at your own pace. That's all this game is, and yes, there's hidden lore too. I'm sure most people have commented on the therapeutic nature of it. It's already pretty relaxing to just sit there by yourself and clean the whole location from top to bottom, even though some later places can look daunting at their scale and take literal hours to finish on your own. Where this game really shines in my opinion is if you get a second player, or multiple players in the case of the special maps, get in a Discord voice chat and just enjoy cleaning things together while chatting. It is quite literally power wash and chill, and yet it is some of the most fun online socializing I've had this whole year. Look, if I haven't convinced you enough to try it, it even has the Sakurai seal of approval. I only wish that aside from the additional maps they'll be adding to the game, they give us a VR mode. I know they're considering it, but for real, please, it'll be so good. The Monkey Island series was another bunch of well-known games that fascinated me from afar. I've never really played a whole lot of fully point-and-click games in my life, usually just as parts of other games like Later Alligator or There Is No Game. I guess Ace Attorney sorta counts too if you really squint. Point is, for a while I was interested in trying the modern point-and-click adventure game that started it all. And it's not surprising to say I definitely wasn't disappointed. Those of you who've already played it will probably know. The writing is great and incredibly varied, the music slaps, and the puzzles were never too frustrating, which is exactly what this game aimed to fix from earlier games in the genre. Though I guess I did play it in a voice call with friends who were familiar with the game, so that probably helped a bit. Still though, it's aged super well, and being able to experience it with the original pixel art plus the added voices from the special edition is a big plus. After this game, I was definitely ready to learn more about the history of the Monkey Island series and check out the other games, which I'm still going through as of this video. But first, Monkey Island 2 is more of the same, and that's good. It's just larger in scale, as all video game sequels are. The more elaborate hand-drawn backgrounds do look pretty good, at a sacrifice of a bit of clarity at this pixel resolution. Otherwise, everything I liked about the original Monkey Island still rings true here, so I don't think I have a lot to say here. I'm just glad I was finally able to try out two of the most acclaimed video games in general. And yes, that ending absolutely caught me off guard. I know the later games in the series involved lots of changing of the guard, but I am still interested in seeing how the rest of the series goes. Out of curiosity, I decided to give Portal Stories VR a try, a free unofficial VR Portal 2 mod set in the same universe. It's incredibly short at only 10 test chambers, and it only revolves around clever navigation and attracting objects from long distances. There's no actual portaling in this one. I will say the one cool part of this is when turrets get involved and you have to physically duck and take cover at times while looking around and assessing your situation. But otherwise you can tell this is an early VR experiment. The only movement method is teleporting, and the control schemes are also not super intuitive on the Oculus controllers. Then again, I didn't expect anything more from a freebie 2016 VR demo. Funny thing though, I tried a mod of Half-Life Alyx later on that literally just puts you in multiple Portal 2 style test chambers, and it is definitely leaps and bounds ahead of what this game offers. Yeah, speaking of which, this is my first Half-Life game. I know, sacrilege! That aside, the notion of VR's first AAA killer app seemed incredibly tempting to try, despite my lack of familiarity with the series outside of Portal, and man does it deliver regardless. This is an insanely detailed world full of stuff to rummage around and tinker with. And while we may repeat the same few VR puzzles a bit too many times, the immersion is still out of this world. Simply moving around and exploring our surroundings is super fun in and of itself. Combat took some learning and getting used to, and without the slight upgrades, I honestly felt pretty gimped and sometimes a bit overwhelmed at first, but otherwise, as someone who's only played SUPERHOT VR before, I found the difficulty curve to be just perfect on the normal setting. The gravity gloves are an ingenious mechanic and make me wish it could be a default in every other VR game going forward. And overall, I very much enjoyed my time despite lacking context for some of the game's lore. Heck, it makes me want to dive into the rest of the Half-Life games now, so maybe next year. This game is probably still out of reach for quite a few people due to its hardware requirements, but if you ever get the opportunity, this is absolutely a must-play VR title. And continuing my journey through the Monkey Island series, we have The Curse of Monkey Island, which begins one of many art style revamps throughout the series. Honestly, the 2D cartoon look actually grew on me quite a bit. It definitely feels like a Saturday morning cartoon at times, in a good way. And for a new development team having to follow up with what was established in the first two games, they did try their best to nail a similar vibe to those games. It was great to see some of the returning cast like the cannibals from the first game, and the new characters like the pirate crew and Murray the Skull deliver great performances as well. For the first game in the series not helmed by its original designer, you could certainly do much worse. The If you're one of the real veterans that have actually heard of the JellyCar series since the early iOS App Store days, then just hearing that a new installment is out probably already compelled you to buy it. Look, this channel and I have a history with it, it's like reuniting with an old friend. For the rest of you, JellyCar Worlds is pretty straightforward to grasp. You're a car made of jelly, and you need to get to the go. You can steer left and right as well as tilt your car around, and you'll need to utilize your squishiness, a whole bunch of power-ups, and the occasional sick flip. It's a well-done combination of driving and platforming with a very neat flipbook aesthetic and the greatest sound design ever to grace a video game. Compared to the previous games from a decade ago, this also surprisingly scales up the challenge quite a bit, with plenty of secret exits and time trials to beat, as well as optional super hard levels that reek of getting over it. Completing everything this game had to offer was tons of fun, even though the final 2 worlds are slated to come out later via free updates. Out of all of this year's releases, this is the one that I very much wish doesn't float over people's radars. And last but not least, the Monkey Island series has had a rough transition to 3D. Okay, look, I'm pretty sure Escape from Monkey Island is probably one of, if not the least liked in the series, and I can very much see why. It's the first game in the series to have 3D graphics, though obviously they're not the type to have aged the best. And for some reason, it gets rid of pointing and clicking in favor of keyboard tank controls as the default. At least you can change it to normal controls, even if it's a slightly more janky method of navigating. There's also occasional technical issues and soft locks, but I think that's more so caused by compatibility issues with modern systems. Getting this to run properly from Steam while also being able to stream it on Discord was a bit of a pain. I wouldn't discount the game entirely though, because there is still some fun to be had in the story and scenarios, including more returning characters and locations from the first game. But in terms of gameplay, there can be puzzles that lean a bit too much towards trial and error. And let's not forget about monkey combat. Those of you who've played the game know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, here's a no-context clip of me getting help from my friends while streaming this on Discord.
DM hits A.
You can if you want.
DM hits AA, so I can just stay as AA.
Yeah, but he's CC, so he's just gonna stay at CC.
Oh right,
you
right.
Could
CC,
also,
I'm idiot.
Yeah, you could also just go from AA to CC and reset this whole thing in order to give us new stances.
DM does AOE and goes to BB. Ow. BB hits DM. BB, so yeah, that's BB. That's BB to AA. That's BB to AA.
AC. Oh, okay, cool.
Rewind that.
Cool. We have the outer outline. So the outer of the monkey pentagram is done.
No, BB hits CC. BB hits CC. We are not.
Oh my god.
How long have you guys been at this?
Oh, I don't know, man.
DC does AEO to change to DM. We did it. We found the last one.
This is our chart.
Let's go kill some monkeys.
Yeah, while I did still enjoy most of my time with this, like the last 3 games, the flaws in this one are definitely much more glaring. Ah, what the heck, as I was finishing my voiceover recording, I was basically 99% of the way through completing this game, so by the time you're watching this video, I'll most likely have already completed Mario Super Picross. I've dabbled in Picross every now and then. It's actually a pretty easy to grasp puzzle game once you know the rules, and it's extremely addictive. But I never really played beyond parts of Mario's Picross on the Game Boy and that one weird Zelda Twilight Princess Picross that let you redeem on My Nintendo a few years back. This is the first Picross game in which I've completed every single puzzle available, and there's no particular reason why it ended up being Mario Super Picross. I started playing it when it was added to NSO back in 2020, but ended up getting stuck on one of the harder Wario puzzles until returning to them this year with a fresh eye. Playing through this actually taught me more skills for solving advanced Picross, although some of the puzzles at the very end still ended up destroying my brain. Fortunately, with it being on NSO, you can have a second player join in and tackle co-op Picross as well, which actually works because SNES Online has rollback unlike the other platforms. Picross is available on many platforms across many series, so if you want to give it a shot, the Picross series on Switch and 3DS are good starting points. But no harm in trying this one out too if you already have NSO. Okay, so after I finished the whole script and was in the editing bay, I caught COVID right after Christmas. Thankfully, it wasn't too severe and I recovered fairly quickly, but during my downtime, I decided to check out some quick games on this cool new Christmas present I bought for myself called the Steam Deck. So consider these last 2 games bonuses because I'm throwing them in after the fact. First of all, I've never actually watched the show. That includes the new reboot. My first exposure to the original DuckTales game on the NES was of its legacy being one of the few great licensed games on the system, in turn inspiring future indie hits like Shovel Knight, that and the Moon Theme. I've checked out the original once or twice, but the remastered version is my first time experiencing it from beginning to end. And as far as NES remasters go, this one pretty much checks everything on the list. From bringing together the original cast on the show to make it even more faithful to the source material, to the quality of life changes while still allowing for the option of traditional NES difficulty, to the great 2D animation, and to Shovel Knight composer Jake Kaufman's incredible remixes of the already banger tracks. In the end, it's still an NES game at heart, but even as someone who's never watched the show, the care that went into this remaster definitely hasn't gone unnoticed. VVVVVV asked a daring question. What if instead of jumping in a platformer, you just flipped gravity upside down instead? The answer is a puzzle platformer where each of the more than 400 screens serve as their own mini obstacle course that, while difficult at first, are incredibly fun to master and speed through over time. It's a short game once you know what you're doing and has been ported to almost every platform under the sun. So every time I revisit it, it becomes a neat test of reducing my number of deaths compared to my previous run. This game just turned 13 years old, but has pretty much never aged with its responsiveness and amazing chiptunes. It's still worth trying today as a cornerstone indie title, or even retrying for those who haven't played it in a bit. And that's every game I've beaten in 2022 as of this video. There are still other games I am currently in the middle of playing, some even nearing the end, but for consistency's sake, I'll leave them for next year's video if I beat them then. It'd be kinda fun to see if I can make this a yearly thing. But hopefully, instead of just being a run-of-the-mill top 10 games of 2022 video, this was a wackier assortment of games with some titles that might have caught your eye. I suppose I'll end the last video of the year with some quick thoughts. I'm aware that 2022 might not have been the most active year on the channel, with me trying to adjust to my regular day job that I've been doing for a year now and still trying to get several scripts off of creative development heck. But for the stuff that I did put out, I still hope you enjoyed them nonetheless and will continue to do so for a while to come. And in addition to the main channel stuff, I've also been taking a look at various trivial topics on my second channel, Akfamilyhome Plus, as well. If you haven't been there yet, definitely go check it out. While I can't make any early promises, trust me that I still have a lot of video ideas in mind and more topics to share. It's only a matter of when I can finally get around to doing them, so I hope you stick around, and thank you for watching in the past year. Hopefully I can see you soon, so stay safe and take care.